Hello YouTubers, Alaska Prepper here. Happy Wednesday, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're all having a great weekend so far. You do understand that we live in what is now a global economy. The world has become a lot smaller ever since globalization took place here several decades ago. And now when something affects one country, especially a commodity, it usually affects the entire world. I've had a crazy morning so far, ladies and gentlemen. Right at the beginning of me recording this video, the gentleman that's supposed to do the plumbing to provide gas to my new range in our new kitchen just showed up. So it's about 2.5, 3 hours later than when I started recording this video. But I really wanted to do this video today because it's our weekly or bi-weekly news compilation video, and we have a lot to cover today. But first, let me remind you that this Friday we do have a live stream at 4 p.m. Alaska time, 8 p.m. Eastern time, so hope to see you there. During that live stream, I really want to talk about and answer any questions that any one of you may have about power generation during a long-term grid down situation. And again, before we start, let me say thank you very much to today's sponsor, Genesis Gold Group. We live in a world economy, which means that if something happens that affects one country, it will more than likely affect the rest of the world, especially if we're talking about a big country. Russia is preparing for a gasoline shortage. Russia is seeking to import gasoline from Kazakhstan in case shortages occur on the Russian market because of the diminished refining capacity due to maintenance and damages from drone attacks. So if they are going to stop exporting gasoline because of what's going on over there and they have to import gasoline, ladies and gentlemen, do you think that's going to be put pressure on the price of gasoline going up or going down? And listen to this, because these are very big numbers. Russia is estimated to have slashed about half of its gasoline exports. So they slashed half of their exports and now they're importing. They're also imposing a 6-month ban on exports from March 1 to ensure sufficient domestic supply in peak demand season. Russia has seen its refining capacity diminished in recent weeks due to seasonal maintenance, but most of all due to drone attacks, which have damaged several refineries that have shut down for repairs. Inflation has only one way to go, and that is up, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure you've heard me say that quite often over the years. Wall Street reacts to today's red-hot inflation print. And from what I understand, the inflation CPI that came out is just shy of 5%, which is definitely not what the Fed's target of 2% is. Morgan Stanley economist Ellen Zentzer said this print tilts the Fed toward a later start to the cutting cycle than our current forecast for June. What you have to understand is this, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you that are interested in preserving your wealth or preserving your purchasing power, is that the price of silver and gold is going up at the same time that the strength of the dollar is going up, and at the same time that interest rates are going up. What do you think is going to happen when the Federal Reserve decides to bring rates down? I believe personally that the price of gold and silver is going to skyrocket because they have no choice. Eventually, they will have to cut rates. I'm not a financial advisor, but the folks at Genesis Gold Group specialize in helping those who want to diversify their excess wealth by converting their fiat currency retirement plans into a plan that is backed by real money. So if you're in a position where you are wondering what you can do in order to diversify or insulate your wealth against what I like to call the inferno of inflation, give Genesis Gold Group a call and they can provide you with the information that you need in order to make an educated decision. And I thought that this was pretty interesting coming from JP Morgan. David Kelly, the chief of global strategies at JP Morgan Asset Management, says, quote, "I wish the Federal Reserve would pay more attention to what they do to financial markets with their manipulation of interest rates and not worry too much about what they are going to do to the economy." So this gentleman here is saying, hey, Federal Reserve, stop manipulating the economy by manipulating the interest rates, pretty much by changing the price of money all the time, right? That's what he's saying. Stop manipulating stuff. Last decade, we mispriced housing terribly, and now a large chunk of younger Americans can't buy a house. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the reason that I bring this up is because it came from JP Morgan. I think it would be fair to say, hey, JP Morgan, can you please stop manipulating, which this has been proven in a court of law. Stop manipulating the price of gold and silver by doing what is called spoofing the markets, meaning placing false orders and then retracting them so that the price of gold and silver can be manipulated down or upward, whichever one it is that you want to do, JP Morgan. So here they are crying because their business is somewhat suffering because of the Fed is doing. But here for the last several decades, JP Morgan, in my opinion, this part has been manipulating the metals market so that they can become billionaires on the backs of the American people. Socialism works great as long as you have other people's money to take from them. But when you run out of other people's money, it doesn't work very well. Remember the $15 an hour that they were always protesting for? Why is no one protesting for $15 an hour anymore? And I do believe that when a government, be it a state or federal government, tells businesses what they have to pay their employees, that is 100% unconstitutional. But then again, I am not a law scholar. California's fast food workers are now the highest paid in the U.S. for the $20 minimum wage that they've set on that state. Ladies and gentlemen, this is going to end in disaster.
Fast food chains in California that are going to raise their prices. Yeah. Now, why California?
Because in April, California will have to pay its 500,000 fast food workers a minimum wage of $20 an hour, $4 more than right now.
We're no longer hiring. We're not backfilling positions. We're not growing in the state anymore. We're not expanding more locations. And I'm ultimately thinking about selling or closing my business.
Ahead of today's wage hike, major chains, including Chipotle, McDonald's, Starbucks, Jack in the Box, and Shake Shack, warned that diners would see higher menu prices, while other chains, including Pizza Hut, announced layoffs. Brian Hom is a franchisee at Vitality Bowls Superfood Cafe. He operates locations up in the Bay Area. How is this impacting your franchises up there in the Bay Area? Did you raise prices today? And if so, by how much?
Yeah, we raised prices today 5 to 10%. And, my concern is the increased price will deter my customers from returning. It's a significant increase. For the state of California, 25%. And I'm afraid that we will not have enough revenue to cover the cost of this wage increase. It's now becoming, it's a luxury to go out and eat now. It's not just a normal, I want to go get something to eat. Some of my customers said they may start just cooking at home, not going out anymore.
And folks, it's no accident. That's Bidenomics in action.
Most California fast food workers are now earning at least $20 an hour. That's the fast food workers that are left, because I see a lot of unemployment coming down the line. The highest minimum wage across the United States restaurant industry. I'm sure that they think that this is something that they can be proud of, but I believe that in the short term, people are going to realize that they made a big mistake by allowing this to happen. The lack of alternatives and the fact that it's becoming a lot more difficult than it was a few years ago to get your money out of China and invest elsewhere, I think that's definitely helping gold. In China, ladies and gentlemen, people are flocking to coin shops, I'm going to call them, or to gold dealers to transfer their fiat currency into real money, gold and silver. It's amazing what a grasp on what real money is the Chinese people have. I wish that it was the same thing here, because the more gold and silver that you put in your hands, the more fiat currency that you exchange for gold and silver, the more fiat currency that gets flushed out of the system, and the more that gold and silver will be worth, telling the federal government that we want real money, ladies and gentlemen. Real money is the key to having a government that is for the people instead of for itself. Maybe we ought to have an I told you so segment, and I'm going to say I told you so. Those of you that are for censoring, those of you that are for shutting down free speech, eventually they will come for you. So make sure you understand that this is a lesson you don't want to learn the hard way, ladies and gentlemen. After years of supporting the censoring and blacklisting of others, these politicians are now being targeted by the very anti-free speech movement that they once fostered. Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you that are new here, thank you very much for joining in. I do appreciate your support. If you can give this video a like, let it play all the way through if you would, please. That really helps the algorithm. And if you are interested in coming back to these articles, ladies and gentlemen, I always leave them on a pinned comment so that you can come back and revisit them if you like. It is of my opinion that if our states' governments stood up to the federal government, that we would be better off as a country. As long as the federal government knows that the states individually are not going to put up with their bull butter, then I think that the federal government would back down in trying to put forth all these laws that are not lawful. They make them legal by voting them in, but they're definitely not lawful. China ditches U.S. farmers for Brazilian ones in protest of land ownership rules. Now, what this article talks about is how China is upset that some states are not allowing them to buy any more land. And I say that's a good thing. Will it hurt a little bit at first? Yes, it will hurt us a little bit at first because they're going to stop buying some of our product. But that's okay, because if we concentrate on making a very good product, we should have no problem as far as finding someone to sell it to. In September of 23, we highlighted that Brazil, one of the BRICS nations, had overtaken the United States in becoming the world's top corn exporter. The sudden shift of China buying Brazilian corn over the U.S. lacked a clear motive at the time. I thought that one of those motives was that the U.S. corn is mostly GMO, but that's just me thinking out loud. I could be wrong. However, now a new Bloomberg report reveals that the shift appeared to be partly in retaliation against a wave of legislation aimed at stopping Chinese citizens and companies from owning U.S. farmland. And I do believe that this is coming down to the state level. It's definitely not a federal thing that's against China buying land. I'm sure that if China wanted to go to the federal government and ask them to do something, that they would be more than happy to do it for them. In my opinion, of course. 7 more states sue to block most generous ever student loan program. How can the government be generous with anything when the government doesn't produce a thing? It can only take from you to give to someone else, ladies and gentlemen. So how can they be generous? President Joe Biden faces a fresh lawsuit from a 7-state coalition challenging his most generous ever federal student loan repayment plan, under which millions of borrowers would pay a monthly bill of $0. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a disgrace to the working man and woman of these United States of America, especially those that did not go to college and still achieved the American dream. And now they have to pay for those that went to college that were not responsible. Just last year, the U.S. Supreme Court struck down an attempt by the president to force teachers, truckers, and farmers to pay for the student loan debt of other Americans to the enormous tune of $430 billion. The complaint stated, noting that the High Court 6-3 majority explicitly ruled that the president should not bypass Congress to implement a decision with such profound impact on the country's economy. You see, this is what I don't understand about the Supreme Court. I agree with their ruling. He shouldn't be doing this, but it's not because it would have some kind of an impact on the economy of the United States. See, if it was lawful, if what he wanted to do was lawful and it had an impact on the economy, so be it. Let it have an impact on the economy. But what they should be saying is you can't do it because it's unconstitutional, period. That's what the Supreme Court is there for. Not to say you shouldn't do this because it will have a negative impact on our economy. No, Mr. President, you can't do this. It's not constitutional. And you swore that you would uphold the Constitution of these United States. And look at this, ladies and gentlemen. This island, which was supposed to have by now disappeared under the water, has actually grown in size. An amount of land equivalent to the Isle of Wight has been added to the shorelines of this 13,000 islands around the world in just the last 20 years. So I guess that the glaciers, as Mr. Al Gore said several decades ago, they're not melting as fast as he said. Anyways, I digress. Dollar Tree shoppers revolt over $7 items. Discount retailer Dollar Tree has sparked a revolt among some of its customers after increasing the price cap of items to $7 across thousands of stores nationwide. Inflation has only one way to go. So get used to it, ladies and gentlemen. Do things that you know are going to add value to your life instead of putting away fiat currency. This is my opinion, of course. Put away things that are tangible in value and that will increase in nominal value as inflation goes up. Have a great rest of your day. God bless every one of you. God bless America. I'm Alaska Prepper. I'm out.